The sudden appearance of alien spacecraft in the skies over Earth sent waves of shock and fear across the globe. Television networks broadcasted continuous live footage of the enormous ships hovering silently above major cities. Social media was ablaze with speculation and panic. Jack Green, a professor of linguistics at the University of California, found himself summoned urgently to a makeshift government facility under the Santa Monica Mountains. The facility was a buzz of activity, with military personnel moving swiftly alongside civilians drafted from various scientific fields. As Jack entered the main conference room, he was greeted by Dr. Emily Carson, a fellow linguist and former colleague. "Jack, glad you could make it," Emily said, offering a quick, tight smile. "Emily, what's the situation?" Jack asked, looking around at the diverse group of experts gathering around a large digital screen displaying the spacecraft. "The situation is we have visitors, and no one knows why they're here or what they want. We need to figure out if we can communicate with them," Emily explained. "And they pulled you out of MIT for this?" Jack asked, raising an eyebrow. "And you out of UC," she countered. "We need the best linguists. You're one of the few who has extensively studied the potential for extraterrestrial communication. Plus, your work on cryptographic languages could be crucial." Before Jack could respond, General Davis, a stern-looking man in uniform, addressed the room. "Ladies and gentlemen, time is of the essence. We have established a secure line to the United Nations, and similar setups are being done globally. Our goal here is clear. Establish communication, assess intentions, and negotiate peace." Jack nodded, feeling the weight of the task. He turned to Emily. "Any ideas on where to start?" "We've been monitoring their signals since arrival. There's a pattern, but it's nothing like any Earth-based language or code," she replied, gesturing for Jack to follow her to a smaller lab room where several techs were stationed at computers with headsets. As they worked, another team member, Dr. Hassan Patel, an expert in nonverbal communication from UCLA, joined them. "I've been analyzing the video feeds of the ships. Their movements are very deliberate, almost rhythmic. There might be a visual language or signal there." Jack considered this. "So, we have potential auditory and visual components. Emily, can we synthesize the audio and video data? Look for overlaps or patterns that correlate." "Good idea," Emily said. She instructed one of the technicians to merge the datasets. The room fell silent as everyone watched the screens intently. After several hours of analysis, Jack noticed something. "There. That sequence repeats whenever the ship aligns with the northern hemisphere. Can we isolate that?" Hassan leaned closer, examining the data. "It's a start. Maybe it's a greeting or an acknowledgement. We should try to mimic or respond." "Let's prepare a response then," General Davis decided, stepping back into the room. "Dr. Green, Dr. Carson, Dr. Patel, I want you three to lead this. Think of it as sending a universal handshake." Jack, Emily, and Hassan exchanged determined looks. They were about to attempt the first human contact with an extraterrestrial civilization. Jack felt the enormity of this moment, knowing that their response could very well shape the future of humanity. "All right, let's craft our handshake," Jack said, feeling a mix of excitement and responsibility as they set to work on humanity's reply to the stars. Jack stood near the observation window of the government facility, watching the sleek alien craft land gently in the designated secure zone. It was smaller than the massive ships hovering over the cities. A shuttle, perhaps, specifically sent for communication. The air was thick with tension, and the quiet hum of activity from scientists and military personnel did little to ease his nerves. "Hard to believe this is real," Hassan said, standing beside him. "I thought we'd be dealing with coded signals for months, not an in-person visit within days." "I'm not sure what's more unnerving," Jack replied. "The fact that they're coming here directly, or that they seem to have planned this all along." Emily joined them, holding a tablet displaying a real-time feed from the landing site. "The envoy is disembarking now. Initial scans show no weapons or immediate threats." Jack glanced at her, then back at the screen. "What do we know about them so far?" "Not much. Their physiology is humanoid, bipedal, upright, and about our height. Beyond that, your guess is as good as mine," Emily said. The trio was called to the briefing room by General Davis, who was standing with a small team of military officers and scientists. On the large monitor behind him was an image of the alien envoy, a tall, slender being with opalescent skin that seemed to shimmer under the sunlight. Its eyes were large, almond-shaped, and a deep shade of violet, exuding an unsettling calm. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is Serena, the representative of the alien visitors," General Davis began. "Our goal is simple. Establish communication, assess intentions, and avoid any actions that could be perceived as hostile." Jack raised an eyebrow. "And how exactly are we supposed to do that?" "That's where you and Dr. Carson come in," Davis replied. "You're leading the dialogue. Dr. Patel will assist in interpreting nonverbal cues." "Great," Jack muttered under his breath. No pressure. The team was escorted to the secure meeting room where the alien envoy awaited them. The room was stark and brightly lit, with a clear partition separating them from Serena. Jack couldn't help but notice how her presence commanded the space. She stood still, observing them with an expression that was neither threatening nor friendly, just intensely curious. Jack and Emily exchanged a glance before stepping forward. Hassan remained at a console, analyzing Serena's movements. Jack started cautiously, his voice steady. "I'm Dr. Jack Green, and this is Dr. Emily Carson. We are representatives of Earth, here to communicate with you." Serena tilted her head slightly, her gaze flicking between the two of them. A moment later, she raised her hand, palm outward. It was an undeniably human-like gesture, and it surprised Jack. "What do you think that means?" Hassan asked over the intercom. "A greeting, maybe?" Emily suggested. Jack mirrored the gesture, raising his own hand in response. Serena's eyes widened slightly, and then she made a series of sounds, sharp, melodic tones that seemed to rise and fall in deliberate patterns. Emily turned to Hassan. "Can you capture that and run it against our earlier data?" "Already on it," Hassan replied, typing furiously on his keyboard. "It's similar to one of the patterns we detected, but there's more complexity here." Jack decided to take a leap. He pressed his hand to his chest and said, "Jack?" Serena watched him intently, then mimicked his movement. "Jack." A murmur ran through the observation room behind them. Emily followed Jack's example, pointing to herself. "Emily." Serena hesitated, then repeated, "Emily." Jack allowed himself a small smile. "Progress." Serena then placed her hand on her chest. "Serena." Jack nodded. "Serena," he repeated, testing the sound. The exchange continued, slow but deliberate, as they began to piece together a rudimentary way of communicating. Serena's expressions, though subtle, became more relaxed as the session progressed. At one point, she gestured toward the digital screen showing Earth's rotation. "She's pointing to Earth," Jack observed. "Maybe she's asking about our planet." Emily pulled up an image of Earth's continents on her tablet and showed it to Serena. Serena leaned forward, studying the map carefully before speaking again in her melodic tones. She then gestured to herself and made another series of sounds, presumably the name of her home planet. "Did anyone get that?" Jack asked, turning to Hassan. "Already analyzing it," Hassan replied. "I think she's trying to describe her world." The conversation, while fragmented, felt like a breakthrough. By the end of the session, Jack couldn't help but feel a strange mix of relief and curiosity. Serena's presence, while alien, was also oddly familiar, as if some fundamental aspect of her being resonated with their own humanity. As they stepped out of the meeting room, Hassan caught up with them. "Well, that wasn't a total disaster. We have a name, a basic reading, and even a glimpse of her planet. Not bad for day one." "Not bad at all," Emily agreed. "But there's still so much we don't know. Why are they here? What do they want from us?" Jack didn't answer. His mind was still on Serena, her voice, and the way her gaze seemed to linger on him just a moment longer than on the others. "I guess we'll find out," he said finally, though he had a feeling that whatever they uncovered next would change everything. Jack leaned back in his chair, rubbing his temples. The lab buzzed with activity as analysts parsed through the data from their first meeting with Serena. Screens displayed endless patterns of symbols and sounds, but no one could make complete sense of the alien envoy's language yet. "I'm telling you, her tonal range isn't random," Hassan said, pacing the room. It's mathematical. There's a pattern in the way she's structuring her phrases. Jack sighed. Even if that's true, we don't have a framework to decode it. This isn't like any language we've studied before. There's no Rosetta Stone for extraterrestrial syntax. Emily, perched on the edge of a desk with a tablet in her hands, cut in. Maybe we're overthinking it. We're treating this like we need to crack a code. But what if it's simpler? She seemed to respond to gestures as much as sounds. Jack nodded thoughtfully. Body language. That's universal, or close to it. Maybe we should lean on that more. Hassan frowned. Are you suggesting we mime our way to interstellar diplomacy? Why not? Jack shot back. It worked for the first meeting. Besides, Serena seemed interested. She's trying as much as we are. A soft chime interrupted their conversation. The intercom buzzed with the voice of the operations officer. Dr. Green, Dr. Carson, Dr. Patel. The alien envoy has requested another meeting. Jack exchanged a glance with Emily and Hassan. Requested? How? Repeated gestures and tonal sequences interpreted as a query, the voice replied. She seems to want more interaction. Hassan grinned. Well, you're popular, Jack. Yeah? Lucky me, Jack muttered as they headed toward the secure meeting room. Inside the room, Serena stood behind the clear partition, her tall, shimmering form motionless. Her large violet eyes tracked their entrance, and she tilted her head slightly when she saw Jack. The room's stark white lights reflected off her opalescent skin, making her seem almost ethereal. Jack took a deep breath and stepped forward. Serena, he greeted, pressing his hand to his chest as he had before. Jack. Serena mirrored the gesture. Jack. Emily stepped beside him and did the same. Emily. My Ly, Serena repeated, then turned her gaze toward Hassan. Hassan, he said with a wave. Serena mimicked the wave and repeated, Hassan. Jack smiled. All right, progress. Let's keep going. He pulled out a tablet displaying a series of simple images. The first was of a tree. Jack pointed to it and said, Tree. Serena leaned closer to the partition, studying the image. She made a soft melodic sound, then repeated, Tree. Encouraged, Jack swiped to the next image, a star. Star. Serena hesitated, then spoke a sequence of tones. The word didn't sound like anything in their own language, but it was consistent. She's giving us her word for it, Emily said excitedly. She's teaching us too. The session continued, a blend of gestures, spoken words, and the exchange of symbols. Jack noticed how Serena's expression softened over time, her initial guardedness giving way to something that resembled curiosity, or perhaps understanding. At one point, Serena gestured to Jack directly and made a sound. It wasn't a word they'd taught her. Jack frowned, pointing to himself. Jack. Serena shook her head and repeated the sound, then gestured to him again, her large eyes steady on his. Emily leaned closer. She's giving you a name, Jack. Hassan chuckled. Looks like you're making a good impression. Jack felt a strange warmth at the idea. What does it mean? No way to know yet, Hassan replied. But she's clearly associating it with you. Serena's gaze lingered on Jack as he nodded. All right, Serena, he said softly. Thank you. As they exited the room, Emily nudged Jack. She likes you. Jack scoffed. She's an alien envoy. I doubt personal feelings come into it. Oh, come on, Hassan said. She gave you a name. That's not just protocol. That's personal. Jack didn't reply, but his mind lingered on the interaction. There was something about Serena that intrigued him, something more than just her alien nature. It wasn't just fascination. It felt like a connection, faint but undeniable. Well, he said finally, whatever it is, we need to make sure we don't mess it up. Let's keep building this bridge, one word at a time. The others nodded, their determination renewed. Together, they walked back to the lab, ready to decode the mysteries of Serena's world and their growing link with her. The second meeting had gone better than any of them expected. Jack, Hassan, and Emily were now tasked with introducing Serena to aspects of human culture in an effort to deepen mutual understanding. The team worked late into the night, preparing a curated series of visual and auditory materials that they hoped would resonate with her. The following morning, Jack and Hassan were escorted to the facility's atrium, where Serena was waiting. She stood near a large table displaying various items, books, artifacts, and a tablet preloaded with human music and videos. Her shimmering skin seemed to catch and refract the natural light pouring in through the windows, giving her an almost otherworldly glow. "She's definitely stealing the show," Hassan muttered as they approached. "Try not to stare," Jack replied under his breath. "Remember, we're here to teach." "Good luck with that," Hassan quipped. Jack cleared his throat and stepped forward. "Serena," he greeted, placing his hand on his chest. She mirrored the gesture, her large violet eyes focused on him. Hassan held up a small globe. "Let's start simple. Earth," he said, pointing to the sphere. Serena tilted her head, reaching out cautiously to touch the globe through the partition. She traced her fingers along the contours of the continents, then looked at Jack. "Earth." "Good," Jack said, nodding. He picked up a book, opening it to a page filled with images of animals. "This is life on Earth." "Animals." Serena leaned closer, examining the images of elephants, birds, and fish. She made a soft melodic sound, then pointed to one of the pictures. "Life." "Exactly," Jack said, smiling. "Hassan, show her the music." Hassan tapped on the tablet, cueing up a piece of classical music. The gentle strings of Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata filled the room. Serena's eyes widened slightly as she listened, her head moving subtly in time with the melody. "She's reacting to it," Hassan whispered. After a moment, Serena gestured to herself and made a series of tones. She then touched the tablet and mimicked the sound of the strings, her voice resonating with surprising clarity and emotion. "She's interpreting it in her own way," Jack said, marveling. "It's incredible." Hassan grinned. "I think she likes Beethoven." As the session continued, Serena became increasingly engaged. Jack and Hassan explained the significance of art, music, and storytelling in human culture, using visuals and sounds to bridge the linguistic gap. Serena, in turn, began to offer glimpses of her own world. At one point, she gestured to the sky visible through the atrium windows and made a series of melodic tones that the team hadn't heard before. Hassan quickly recorded the sounds, while Jack gestured for her to elaborate. "Home," Serena said, pointing upward. "My home." Jack's breath caught. It was the first time she had used a human word to describe something from her world. "Your home?" he asked, pointing upward as well. She nodded, her expression softening. She then used the tablet to draw a series of symbols, circles and lines that seemed to represent planetary orbits. One circle glowed faintly as she touched it, indicating her planet. "She's showing us where she's from," Hassan said quietly. Jack leaned closer. "Serena, what's it like?" he asked, his voice gentle. Serena hesitated, then gestured to the globe of Earth. She pointed to the oceans, then to the symbol of her planet. "Water." "Same." She's comparing our oceans to hers, Jack realized. "There's water on her planet." The revelation sent a ripple of excitement through the team, but Jack found himself focusing more on Serena's expression. For the first time, she seemed almost vulnerable, as though revealing something deeply personal. As the session wrapped up, Jack and Hassan walked back to the lab together. "She's opening up," Hassan said. "I didn't think we'd get this far this quickly." Jack nodded, his thoughts lingering on Serena's gestures and words. "She's not just learning about us. She's trying to share herself with us. That's rare." Hassan gave him a sidelong glance. "You sound like you're getting attached." Jack chuckled softly. "Maybe I am. There's something about her. It's like she wants us to understand her, not just her people." "Well, let's not mess it up," Hassan said, clapping him on the back. "We've got a lot more to learn." As they entered the lab, Jack couldn't shake the feeling that their connection with Serena was becoming more than just professional. It was personal, and it was only the beginning. The facility was unusually quiet. After days of productive exchanges with Serena, an unexpected complication arose, a minor system malfunction in the environmental controls of the facility. It wasn't serious, but it necessitated a temporary lockdown while engineers worked to stabilize the issue. Jack, Hassan, and Serena were confined to the same wing, isolated from the rest of the team. Well, this is cozy, Hassan said, leaning back in his chair. Nothing like a forced break to make things interesting. Jack glanced at Serena, who was seated across the room. She seemed calm, her large violet eyes scanning the room with her usual curiosity. Let's try to make the most of it. If we're stuck here, we might as well keep talking, or at least trying to. Hassan smirked. Always the optimist. Jack grabbed a tablet and approached Serena, who turned her gaze to him as he sat down across from her. Serena, he said gently, holding up the tablet to display a series of images of human daily life. Families, meals, celebrations. This is how we live. Together. She leaned forward, studying the images carefully. Her slender fingers brushed the screen as she pointed to a picture of a group sharing a meal. Together, she repeated, her voice melodic. Jack nodded. Yes. Together. Hassan joined them, carrying a cup of coffee. Think she'd like this? He joked, setting the cup on the table. Serena tilted her head, sniffing the air curiously. What is this? She asked, her English still halting but improving. Coffee, Hassan said, grinning. Liquid fuel for humans. You want to try? Jack raised a hand. Probably not a good idea, Hassan. We don't know how her physiology would react. Hassan shrugged. Fair point. Guess we'll keep this human privilege to ourselves. Serena's lips curled into what could only be described as a faint smile, surprising both men. Jack couldn't help but smile back. You're getting better at understanding us. Serena met his gaze, her expression softening. Learning you, she said slowly. Important. Jack felt a strange warmth at her words. We feel the same, he said. Learning about you. It's important to us too. As the hours dragged on, they passed the time by sharing more about their respective worlds. Jack drew simple sketches of Earth seasons, explaining the concept of snow and rain, while Serena described her planet's long cycles of light and darkness using gestures and melodic tones. Hassan played more music, which Serena seemed to enjoy, occasionally mimicking the melodies with surprising accuracy. At one point, the lights flickered slightly, and the room's temperature dropped a few degrees. Serena shivered faintly, her body not accustomed to the sudden chill. Jack noticed immediately. Here, he said, shrugging off his jacket and draping it around her shoulders. She looked at him, her violet eyes wide with surprise. Warm, she said softly, touching the fabric. It's called kindness, Hassan joked, though his tone was warm. Humans are pretty good at that. Serena glanced between them, her expression unreadable at first, then softening. Kindness, good. As night fell, the three of them settled into a quiet camaraderie. Hassan dozed off in a corner, leaving Jack and Serena to continue their quiet exchange. Jack found himself drawn to her presence, her curiosity, and the way she seemed to open up more with each passing moment. You seem different tonight, Jack said, his voice low so as not to wake Hassan. More relaxed. Serena tilted her head. You make safe, she said simply. Jack blinked, caught off guard by the sincerity in her tone. Safe. She nodded, her gaze steady. With you? No fear. Jack felt his chest tighten at her words. I'm glad, he said softly. I want you to feel that way. Always. The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was filled with unspoken understanding, a connection that neither of them fully understood, but both seemed to feel. As Jack watched her, he realized that their time together, however strange and unexpected, had become something he deeply valued. And in that quiet moment, as the facility hummed faintly around them, Jack couldn't shake the feeling that this connection was becoming something much more profound than he had ever anticipated. The lockdown continued into the next day, but the atmosphere between Jack, Hassan, and Serena had shifted. The enforced proximity had drawn them closer in unexpected ways. What began as cautious exchanges had become a comfortable rhythm of shared stories, gestures, and quiet moments. Jack and Serena were seated near the large observation window overlooking the forested hills surrounding the facility. The sun was setting, casting a golden light across the room. Hassan was tinkering with a portable device nearby, half listening to their conversation. You mentioned your home has water, Jack said, breaking the silence. What's it like? The oceans, The rivers? Serena tilted her head, her shimmering skin catching the light. Water moves. Like life, she said, her voice melodic as she gestured with flowing motions. Jack smiled. That's beautiful. And life? Do you have animals? Creatures? Serena nodded slowly. Different, not same. Small. Bright. Bright? Jack asked, intrigued. She touched her hand to the light streaming through the window. Glow. Soft. Like stars. Jack imagined her world as she described it. A place of glowing creatures and flowing waters, both alien and strangely serene. It sounds incredible. Serena's violet eyes lingered on him. Your world. Many colors. Many sounds. Beautiful. It has its moments, Jack replied, chuckling softly. Though I imagine your planet would feel like something out of a dream to us. Hassan glanced up from his device, smirking. And here I thought Earth was the pinnacle of beauty. Guess we've got competition. Jack rolled his eyes. Thanks for the commentary, Hassan. Just saying, Hassan replied, standing and stretching. I'll give you two a minute. I'm going to see if the coffee situation's improved. As Hassan left, the room grew quieter. Jack turned back to Serena, who was gazing out the window. She seemed lost in thought. Do you miss it? Jack asked gently. You're home? Serena hesitated, then nodded. Miss. Yes. But here good. Jack felt a warmth in her words. I'm glad you feel that way. She turned to him, her expression soft. With you, kind. Safe. Jack's breath caught. The sincerity in her voice and the way her eyes met his made the air between them feel heavier, charged. He wasn't sure what to say, so he simply nodded. Serena tilted her head, as if studying him. Then, slowly, she raised her hand, her fingers brushing his cheek. The gesture was so unexpected that Jack froze, his heart pounding. Warm, she said softly, her hand lingering. Jack swallowed, his voice barely above a whisper. Yeah, warm. The moment stretched, and Jack found himself leaning in slightly. Serena didn't pull away. Her large eyes remained steady, and when their faces were close enough that he could feel her breath, she spoke again. Close, she murmured. Jack closed the distance, his lips meeting hers in a gentle kiss. Her skin was cool against his, but the kiss was soft, tentative, and filled with a kind of wonder neither of them had experienced before. When they finally parted, Serena's gaze held his, her expression unguarded. Why? She asked quietly. Jack smiled, his voice equally soft. Because it felt right. Serena tilted her head, as though processing his words. Then she nodded slowly. Right. Hassan's voice broke the silence as he re-entered the room, oblivious to what had just transpired. Coffee's still terrible. Surprise, surprise. Jack cleared his throat, sitting back slightly. Serena remained calm, her expression serene as she glanced at Hassan, then back at Jack. Anything interesting happen while I was gone? Hassan asked, raising an eyebrow. Jack shot him a look. Just more cultural exchange. Hassan said, smirking. Well, carry on. I'll just be over here, pretending not to notice. As Hassan busied himself again, Jack glanced at Serena. She gave him the faintest smile, and he couldn't help but smile back. Something between them had shifted, something neither of them fully understood, but both seemed willing to explore. The lockdown ended with a quiet announcement, but the air between Jack and Serena felt charged with unspoken emotion. They had shared something neither could ignore, and though Hassan's teasing remarks about cultural connections were lighthearted, Jack knew the bond they'd formed was unlike anything he'd ever experienced. In the lab that afternoon, the team reconvened to continue their work. Hassan was busy analyzing patterns in Serena's shared planetary data, while Emily joined Jack in reviewing her latest communication logs. You've been quiet, Emily noted, glancing at Jack. Something on your mind? Jack hesitated, his thoughts drifting to Serena. It's complicated. Emily arched an eyebrow. Complicated as in alien linguistics complicated? Something else? Jack avoided her gaze. Let's just say the line between work and personal connection is getting blurry. Emily leaned back in her chair, studying him. You mean Serena, don't you? Jack sighed. Yeah. She's different. In a way I didn't expect. Emily nodded slowly. I get it. She's not just some envoy. She's a person, alien or not. Just be careful, Jack. This is uncharted territory for all of us. Before Jack could respond, Serena entered the lab. Her presence drew immediate attention. Even Hassan paused his work to greet her. Hey, Serena, Hassan said, waving. Come to share more glowing mysteries from your world? Serena's gaze lingered on Jack as she replied, Share. Yes. Jack felt a flush rise to his face as Hassan chuckled. All right, I'll leave you two to your sharing, Hassan said, smirking before heading to the far side of the lab. Serena approached Jack, her steps deliberate. She placed a small, crystalline object on the table in front of him, a fragment of something that shimmered like her skin. What's this? Jack asked, picking it up gently. From my home, Serena said softly. Gift. Jack turned the crystal in his hands, the light refracting through it like a prism. It's beautiful, he said, his voice sincere. Thank you. Serena's gaze softened. You give me much. Kindness. Warmth. I give back. Jack set the crystal down and met her eyes. You don't have to give me anything, Serena. Just having you here. It's enough. Her expression shifted, as though she were trying to find the words to say something important. Jack, she said slowly, her melodic voice steady. I feel strong with you. Safe. Jack swallowed hard. I feel the same. Hassan, from across the room, called out. You two need a room? Or are we keeping this professional? Jack glared at him. Hassan, I swear. Serena interrupted with a faint laugh, a sound so unexpected it silenced both men. She looked at Hassan and said, Kindness? Jack. Good. Hassan threw up his hands. Hey, I'm just here to decode alien data. Whatever this is, it's above my pay grade. Jack shook his head, smiling despite himself. Let's take a walk, he said to Serena. They stepped outside into the twilight, the first stars beginning to shimmer in the sky. Serena looked up, her expression unreadable. Your stars, like mine, she said softly. Jack stood beside her. Do you ever feel far from home when you see them? Serena turned to him, her violet eyes reflecting the faint starlight. Yes, but with you less far. Her words hung in the air, and Jack felt an ache he couldn't explain. He reached out, his fingers brushing hers. She didn't pull away. You've changed everything, Serena, he said, his voice low. This connection. It's not something I ever expected. Serena tilted her head. Connection. Strong. Jack smiled. During the alien invasion, I found love in the most unexpected place. She studied him for a moment, then placed her hand gently on his chest. Love. Unexpected. But good. Jack covered her hand with his, the warmth of the moment enveloping them. Whatever challenges lay ahead, he knew they would face them together. The days after the lockdown were a whirlwind of activity. With the crisis resolved, both the human and alien teams refocused on bridging the gap between their species. Serena had become more than just a representative of her people. She was now a symbol of a personal connection that transcended the divide between two worlds. Jack and Hassan were in the lab, analyzing a fresh set of data that Serena had shared. The shimmering holographic display depicted intricate diagrams of her planet's technology, far beyond anything humanity had ever imagined. Look at this, Hassan said, pointing to a pulsating structure in the diagram. This isn't just energy production. It's some kind of fusion of biology and technology. Their whole civilization seems to work with nature instead of against it. Jack nodded, but his thoughts were elsewhere. His gaze kept drifting toward the door, as though expecting Serena to walk in at any moment. All right, out with it, Hassan said, leaning back in his chair. You've been distracted ever since the lockdown ended. Jack sighed. It's Serena. Everything about her, about us, is complicated. She's leaving soon, Hassan. Her mission is almost complete. And you're wondering if this connection is just going to vanish? Hassan asked, his tone unusually serious. Jack didn't respond. He didn't need to. The unspoken truth hung heavily between them. Later that evening, Jack found Serena in the observation room, standing alone by the window. The stars stretched endlessly across the sky, and for a moment, it felt as though they were the only two beings in existence. "You're leaving soon," Jack said quietly, stepping beside her. She turned to him, her expression calm but tinged with something he couldn't quite name. "Yes, duty calls. But I stay in here." She touched her chest, just above her heart. Jack smiled faintly. "It's not the same." "No," she agreed. "Not same, but strong." He hesitated, then asked, "Do you have to go? Couldn't you stay? At least a little longer?" Serena looked at him, her violet eyes steady. "My people need me. But you are part of me now." Jack felt his chest tighten. "It's hard, Serena. You've become everything I didn't know I needed." She tilted her head, her gaze softening. "And you? Everything I didn't know was possible." They stood in silence for a moment, the weight of her departure settling between them. Then, Serena reached out, her hand brushing his. "Together," she said, her voice firm despite its gentleness. "Always." Jack clasped her hand, his fingers curling around hers. "Always," he echoed. The next day, the team gathered at the launch site where Serena's shuttle awaited. Scientists and officials exchanged formalities, but Jack barely heard them. His focus was entirely on Serena, who stood serenely at the center of the activity. Hassan nudged him. "You gonna say goodbye, or just stare like a lost puppy?" Jack gave a weak laugh. "Thanks for the support." Hassan grinned. "Hey, if it means anything, I think she'll miss you too." Jack approached Serena as the final preparations were made. "This isn't goodbye," he said firmly. "No," Serena replied. "Not goodbye. Start." He nodded, taking a deep breath. "I'll see you again." She touched his cheek gently, her expression serene. "Yes, again." As Serena boarded the shuttle, Jack felt a mix of pride and sorrow. The engines roared to life, and the sleek vessel lifted into the sky, disappearing into the stars. In the days that followed, Jack threw himself into his work, decoding the knowledge Serena had left behind. Yet, her absence was a constant ache. Late one night, as he gazed at the stars from the observation window, Hassan joined him. "She's out there," Hassan said. "Somewhere." Jack nodded. "I know. And if anyone can find a way to bridge the distance," Hassan added, clapping him on the shoulder, "it's you." Jack smiled faintly, his resolve hardening. The connection he'd formed with Serena wasn't bound by the limits of space or time. It was a new beginning, one he would carry forward, no matter how far apart they were.